Once, there was a pillow. It lay in bed all day. Beside a window, out of which it could see the world and the seasons. Every day the pillow looked out the window and watched the seasons pass. And every evening a head came and rested in the pillow's lap. And every morning the head left and the pillow remained, looking out the window. It watched the leaves change their colors and fall, and the frost sparkle on the window pane, and the first buds of spring. It watched the gathering of storms and the waxing and waning of the moon. And in time, the pillow began to ask itself, is this all there is for me? Lying around all day, watching the world go by? It began to feel that it maybe had something else inside, something to offer the world other than holding a sleeping head. And one spring morning, before the head left the room, it opened the window, and a cool spring breeze came in, examining, exploring, sniffing about the room, the walls, the ceiling, the sheets, brushing across the pillow, and the pillow felt the cool spring breeze. And as it looked out the window, it saw a black bird perch on the windowsill, cocked its head one way and the other, and then the bird hopped onto the end of the bed. And as the pillow watched nervously, the bird hopped close and closer until it was right on top of the pillow. The pillow could feel its sharp talons. And then the bird pecked hard on the pillow, pecked again and again and again until the pillow was torn open. And the bird buried its beak deep inside the pillow and pulled out a beak full of feathers and flew off. And the pillow thought, that was odd. What is that stuff that has come out of me? The breeze blew into the room again, and one or two feathers were caught up by the breeze, lifted up and floated around the room as the pillow watched in wonder, seeing its little feathers drifting about in the air, taking wing on the breeze, and then flying out the window, where another bird had come, perched itself, cocked its head from one side to the other, and hopped onto the bed, and then pressed its beak into the widening hole in the pillow's chest, pulled out yet more feathers. One after another, birds came in until the hole was a gaping wound in the pillow's case, and its feathers were all adrift in the spring breeze, all being blown in a whirl around the room and then out the window into the wide world. Ah, felt the pillow, this is what I had inside me all this time. This is what I was meant for. This is what I was longing for. And its feathers flew out into the world and feathered the nests of the spring birds and got caught in the nettles of the growing bushes, and some of the feathers fell into the wandering streams and drifted in tiny little eddies out to sea. You may, in your walking and wanderings, chance upon a drifting feather. When you see it, you'll know that the pillow has finally become a part of the world. The head, meanwhile, finding a torn and empty pillowcase, replaced it with a hypoallergenic foam pillow and had the best night's sleep it had ever known. I'm afraid it is a professional habit of the storyteller to animate the world around. The habit of anthropomorphism, right? Because stories are full of, well, thoughtful pillows and talking chairs and weeping stones and singing streams. It's like that marvelous observation that Duke Senior makes when he enters into the forest of Arden in Shakespeare's As You Like It. He says, "Now, my co-mates in exile, are not these woods more free from peril than the envious court? Here feel we but the penalty of Adam, the icy fang, which even when it bites and blows upon my body, I smile and say, these are no flatterers. These are counselors that feelingly persuade me what I am. Sweet are the uses of adversity, which, like a toad, ugly and venomous, wears yet a precious jewel in his head, and this our life, exempt from public haunts, finds tongues in trees, books in the running brooks, sermons in stones, and good in everything." And that's the habit that can sometimes become a haunt. When you're a storyteller and you're looking at the world and the world is looking back at you. I mean, if you would just imagine, what is it like to be something else, this carpeted lectern, this patient microphone, seeing how it's sitting there, looking so eager and patient and focused, waiting for words to consume it, to swallow up my words. You see, the problem is that it can be a problem, but it can also be a strategy, and I'll tell a story on my son Jordan here. Many years ago, when he was much littler, we had to go somewhere. And I had to get him in the car. And I had to get him into his car seat, which was a complicated safety affair with cushions and hard shell and a series of buckles. And I was trying to get him going so that we could get going, because we had somewhere we had to be, and I can't remember exactly now what it was, whether I had to take him to a friend's birthday party or to a school event or whatever it was. I was busily shaking my keys and opening the door and getting his car seat ready, and he was fascinated with the star pattern of the Japanese maple and the sunlight that was playing in it. He was just simply there and enchanted by the moment. And of course, I, being a hurrying adult, was anxious to get going. But rather than get angry and be yelling at him and pleading with him or even pulling on him, I decided to employ the storyteller's habit of anthropomorphizing things. And so I began talking to his belt buckles. "Well, I'm sorry, guys. Doesn't look like Jordan's going to be going with us today. I know you've been waiting for him." "Yeah," the belt buckle started saying. "Yeah, it's been hot and stuffy in here, and we don't really get to do much unless the kid's coming along, and we really miss him. We always love to give him a big hug and everything." "Yeah, well, I don't know. There's not much I can do because he's not coming. He's here, over here looking at the tree." Of course, Jordan overheard me talking with the buckles and became interested in the conversation that was happening with the buckles, and the buckles were saying, "Gosh, we wish we could really hold on to the kid." And he said, "Don't worry, I'm coming, it's okay." And he climbed up in, and the buckles were delighted. "Hey, kiddo, how you doing there, And great to have you there. Oh, man, you're looking great today. You feel, hey, Ralph, wake up down there." Ralph was that crotch buckle that was hanging there. Yeah. "Whoa, oh, yeah, hey, how you doing, kiddo? Yeah, all right, we're ready to go. Yeah, I'm doing fine, all right, yeah, hey." Now I got him in his car seat. Yeah. Okay, I had sort of guilted him into his car seat by using the sort of projection of the buckles, but it worked, right? As a strategy. Only problem was, when you bring something to life, you are responsible for that life. And so now I'm driving the car, but he's talking to the buckles. So we're going down the street, you know, and now the Buckles have these, is this emergent personality, and I realize, well, the Buckles just don't get out much, right? They don't know much about the world. All they know is what they see through the window and what I was sitting there in the seat, and when the kid comes along, and so they're full of questions. So it offers me this parental opportunity for a kind of Socratic dialogue with Jordan as the kid down there. The Buckles say, "Hey kid, where are we going today?" We're going to a party. Great, that sounds great. What's a party? Well, a party is a place where you have fun. Oh, that sounds like a lot of fun. What's fun exactly? Well, you know, doing things like playing, you know, being with friends and stuff. Oh yeah, it's nice to have friends. Are you our friend? Yeah, I'm your friend. Yeah, we're your friends. You know, it goes on like that. All the while he's having this conversation with the Buckles and I'm driving the car. You know, and I'm stopping at stoplights and I'm signaling turns and I'm doing all of these things, and while projecting myself in this kind of schizophrenic manner to these belt buckles back there, right? And so from that moment on, now I have this responsibility for this new life, you see. And it's the kind of projection or the animation, if you will, and I called this talk today, The Animated Life, is what happens is the world becomes animate. It is animate. It becomes animated. All sorts of things become animated. Because animation simply means to give life to. So, you know, if I'm weeding the garden, it's very difficult to do anymore because I know these plants have every right to live as much as the other ones next to them that are rooted next to them. It's just that these are not the ones that we want, and so we call them weeds. And these are the ones that we do want, and so I'm apologizing to every single one, every single dandelion that I have to pull up out of the garden, or sour grass, or wheatgrass, or whatever it is that's in there. And you know, it becomes an achingly difficult time to be in the world, and there's ants on the counter, and luckily, you know, my wife has no guilt at all about squishing and brushing them away. And I read E.O. Wilson, and I realize that the ants themselves are really sort of tendrils of a vast superorganism. So I just sort of think, okay, it's like getting you a trim, all right? I'm just trimming the bigger ant, which these ants are little tendrils of, you know. And it's around this time that I have a toothache. I begin to have this awful throbbing toothache in my mouth, and now I have this entity, this being that's in my mouth, right? I think of it as my mouth, but something has come in and taken over my mouth. Have I got an infection? Am I infected? Has something come in to live on me that I'm feeling very keenly now in my sore tooth? And now I'm having a dialogue in my mind with these whatever it is that's living there, asking you, please, if you could go find somewhere else to live. Well, I eventually have to go to the dentist. And the dentist takes x-rays and does the examination, etc., and comes to the conclusion that what I'm having happen with my tooth is something they call root resorption. Some of you may be familiar with the term. Those of us of an age, I'm sure, probably had encounters like that. But what he's basically telling me is that the root of my tooth is being resorbed by my body, that my body is actually in conflict with the root, that it's not some external necessarily microorganism, although he prescribes for me antibiotics because it makes me vulnerable to infection to make sure that that doesn't become infected, etc. But basically, I'm having a hard time getting along with myself. That's what's going on. And I'm lying in bed hoping this will pass, and you know, as he suggested, it will pass. And I'm thinking now, you know, here I've got this tooth growing on my jaw, and it has roots, and that's like a garden, right? You know, and in the garden you have soil, and then you have the plants that go down to the soil and kind of exploit the soil, and then grow up and gather light from the sun, and so they're separate entities. And I feel like, well, are my teeth things that are growing out of me? Are they not part of me? Are they something that's like taking, like a weed does? You know, are teeth essentially some kind of an enamel weed that we found useful for chewing on things? And I begin to feel kind of creepy, like I've got these things rooted in me, you know, that are pressing down and that are basically living off of me, you know. And I'm feeling like, again, that kind of schizophrenia, but now it's with, I am a self-divided, right? And I'm having this hard time understanding how is it that I'm in conflict with myself in this way. Well, the pain passes and the antibiotics complete their course. And so my wife, Stephanie, who is really very smart and capable health and wellness educator, plies me with probiotics after the antibiotics. Because, and she makes it very clear, that the antibiotics have been killing the microorganisms in my body, the ones that might have been part of the infection, but any other ones that happen to be there too, because antibiotic means anti-life, essentially, is what biotic is. So I've been basically fighting my life, fighting for my life by fighting against my life in some strange way, and now I have to take the probiotics, which are in favor of life, and which are what they're going to be doing is basically I'll be ingesting life, right? I'll be ingesting microorganisms to basically restore the microbiome that is essential to my life. And now I'm thinking about this microbiome. Because that means there's these microorganisms, basically, that are inhabiting what I think of as me, but I'm not sure where I end and the biome begins. Because, thanks to my health educator wife, I learn that there are something like 10 times as many microorganisms that inhabit our body as there are human cells that make up our body. So, which am I? These human cells or the microorganisms? And am I, well, my human cells kind of like the garden soil, just a medium for growth of other things? And is my existence only, primarily, the purpose of my existence is to support this robust microbiome that I carry around in me? And I'm beginning to wonder now, well, who am I anyway then? Who is the me that is thinking of me? Alan Watts used to like to share a limerick that went something like this. There was a young man who said, though, it seems that I know, what I'd like to see is the I that knows me when I know that I know that I know. And I'm having that same kind of problem with the I that knows me. Who am I? Am I the I who I think I am who's doing these thoughts? Or are these thoughts being generated by this congregation of microorganisms that are inside of me? And are my actions and is my behavior and all the bad choices and the regrets that I have because of them really the result of actions chosen by the microbiome? Is that my excuse? Would it hold up in court? But let me give you an example. Now, here's an example. When I know the microbiome is trying to assert its will, I'm walking the dog around the block, right? And I've got the poop bags. And I have to stop for the dog, and then I take the bag, and no sooner do I have to clean up after the dog than my nose starts to itch. Has that ever happened to you? You're taking out the garbage. Your eyes itch, right? You're touching some nice, fertile, fecund, gooey, yucky stuff in the world, and there's some part of your body that wants to make contact with it, right? Wants you to touch it and then go. It's the microbiome. So, around this time, the kitchen drain is clogged. And so I get the plunger from the bathroom, and I bring it into the kitchen, and I try to unclog the drain, right? And there's this deep sort of gastronomical rumbling from underneath the floor as the suction begins to push and pull whatever's down there in the pipes within the kitchen, right? And I can't get it clear. I get the plumber who comes in who's offered to clear it all for me for many hundreds of dollars, which I don't have. So I go to the hardware store and I look for drain cleaners of various kinds, and I find a green, biotic, enzymatic, active drain cleaner, which I can pour down the drain, which will eat up whatever it is that's clogged it in there, and essentially it's probiotics, right, for my drain. So now wait a minute, I'm pouring this stuff down the drain, I'm thinking the drain, it's a lot like a digestive system, isn't it? Yeah. It's like the house has got these intestines, internal organs that are long, long miles of piping that have to process a lot of the waste and the stuff that is going out of the house. It's basic, and that the house itself, actually the house itself is kind of like an organism in a way, because you have waste disposal, you have breathing light, air comes in and out and in, and there exist inside the house organisms that take care of it. I'm one of those organisms. I clean its surfaces, I repair the hinges, I putty the holes in the wall, I sweep and I mop, and I realize I'm part of the microbiome of this house. And what I'm doing, I'm doing for myself, is actually keeping the house in repair. It's good for the house. So it's that kind of symbiotic relationship that I realize that's part of how this microbiome works inside my body. Now I'm inside a larger body of which I'm a microbiome, and my house, of course, is on a block. Our house, and it's got a yard around it, which I also microbiomatically am weeding and taking care of in order for it to remain healthy, and watering and whatnot, and neighbors and neighborhoods with whom I am friendly, because we're part of the microbiome that constitutes the neighborhood, right? And so with somebody's trash day, I help pull out their trash if they forgot to do that. The bear comes and eats up somebody else's garbage, and I help sweep it up and put it back in place after the bear's gone away. And the bear himself, he's part of the microbiome of the neighborhood too. He's this huge digestive enzyme that's helping to decompose all the extra waste that we've put out there for him. And I realize that we're intimately connected in that way. And so now I have no idea what my place in the world is, or where I am, or what I even mean when I talk about me. And around this time, I have to get Jordan to an event at his school. And I think it's early in the school year, and his class is having a get-to-know-you with the new teacher pizza party kind of thing. And he's hopping right in there. Hey, guys, how you doing? Talking to his belt buckles, And I'm driving him. Oh, okay, here we go. All right. And the belt buckles are, where are we going today, kid? And he says, well, we're going to school. Cool, school. Yeah, that's right. Remind me, what is school again? Well, it's a place where you learn things. Oh, yeah. You mean like this car? Is this car school? Because I'm always learning stuff from you when you're teaching to me. And he says, well, no, it's different because there's other kids and they're having this conversation. Or what are you going to be doing? I'm just driving the car, And the belt buckles and Jordan are having a wonderful time talking to each other. What are you going to have? What are you going to do there? We're going to have pizza. Oh, yeah, that sounds great. Yeah, pizza. What's pizza? Pizza's a food. It's my favorite food. I really like it. It's a really tasty. Oh, yeah, that's great. What is pizza made of? He says, God. The belt buckles don't know what to say to that. So he says, isn't that right, Dad? Oh, suddenly I'm in the car now. I'm in a conversation. I haven't been a part of this conversation. I've just been driving the car. So I'm saying, isn't what right? What are you talking about? He said, well, Pizza. Isn't pizza made of God? And so I, at a red light, and I'm going down this rabbit hole about the question of God, being a good Unitarian Universalist, with all of the stories that we learn, and all of the points of view that we embrace. But I keep it simple. I say, why, yes. It makes sense. Pizza must be made of God, of course. And he's satisfied with that answer. Everybody seems satisfied with that answer. The light turns green, and suddenly everything is luminous. It's numinous. And I'm thinking, about Walt Thornhill. He passed away this last winter. He was a really wonderful guy, gentle soul, and brilliant physicist that I met in the years before COVID. I was part of a group of scientists and mythologists who would gather together to discuss the electromagnetic nature of the cosmos. The group calls themselves the Electric Universe Group. And Wall was a plasma physicist. And I learned many things from him. There was a lot of discussion of the role of electricity in the circuitry of the galaxy, in the circuitry of a tree, in the whole composition of life, and that's a rabbit hole we'll go down some other time. But basically, Wall talked about how a plasma is a free-flowing form of matter with free-flowing electrons that carries vast electrical currents across the universe, and that the sun is actually not a singular, separate burning ball of fire, but it is a node on an electromagnetic network receiving and sending electromagnetic signals through various plasma channels and currents, and that in a sense the solar system itself is can almost be imagined as a kind of a circuit board with all of its various electromagnetic nodes, and the way that signals are sent and received throughout the entire interconnected electromagnetic universe, and that there is a way in which the plasma, and he's explaining this to me, and I'm going about as far as I can with my limited understanding of physics, but when certain currents are strong enough and the plasma braids into what are called Birkeland currents, and then there's a pinch, it can actually cause matter to come into being. And I'm thinking about the Aztec mythology of the universe being made of teot, which becomes a concept of a kind of a moving, spinning, dancing force that flows through everything and takes different shapes the way ripples do on a stream or a whirlpool in an eddy. Looks like momentarily a solid shape, but is in fact just something that's in flow, that's twisting on itself, forming the illusion of separate realities, of separate entities, and that's what the Aztecs called God. And if that's God, and if plasma does the same thing in a scientific sort of physics cosmology, then pizza is indeed made of God. But so am I, and all my microorganisms, and so's my house, and so's the microphone here who's eating up all my words, and so are you, and so are we, and so all is. And the idea of being in a flow and of flowing and of being in a kind of cosmic dance is certainly nothing new, probably not new at all new to any of you, but it's something that makes sense of the animated universe that I find myself inhabiting as a storyteller. And I realize I kind of like it that way. I like that feeling that I got, that luminous, numinous feeling of being in a bigger way, you know, not feeling so separate and cut off and attacked or exploited, but participating, being a participant in some vast, shimmering, luminous, flowing dance of being. And while I can't think that way all the time because I have to do the laundry and I have to go grocery shopping and I have to put Band-Aids on things and, you know, change my clothes from time to time and that sort of stuff. I try to use my storyteller's imagination as a way to come back to that, to look at the world and imagine the world looking back. And I feel that if we can do that, we can move from this notion of separate independence and begin to arrive in the place where we truly are, of interdependence. So I invite you to imagine the animated life. Thank you.